the slow mending of bodies, physical therapy in the Middle Ages. Tonight, we are going to talk about sore backs, also stiff knees, also crooked fingers, swollen ankles, aching shoulders, badly healed bones, strained hips, bruised ribs, weak legs, old wounds, tired feet, and the quiet, practical business of trying to make the human body useful again. We are going to talk about physical therapy in the Middle Ages, not physical therapy as we know it now. There are no modern clinics, no resistance bands in bright colors, no adjustable treatment tables covered in paper, no laminated charts of the shoulder joint, no ultrasound machines, no electrical stimulation pads, no cheerful therapist saying, "Let's do 10 more." There are no printed exercise sheets with little drawings of people stretching their calves against a wall. There is no wall chart explaining the rotator cuff. There are no insurance codes. That last part may be the only mercy. Instead, there are hands. There are warm cloths. There are baths. There are splints. There are crutches. There are poultices. There are ointments. There are bone setters. There are surgeons with knives and bandages. There are monks tending the sick. There are women in households who know how to wrap a swollen wrist. There are old men who know how to rub a stiff joint because they have had one for 20 years. There are soldiers learning to walk again after an arrow wound. There are farmers who cannot afford to stop moving. There are queens with aching hips after childbirth. There are pilgrims with blistered feet. There are laborers with backs that bend too much and heal too little. There are people trying, as people always have, to return from pain to motion. This is the quiet history of recovery. The Middle Ages did not have physical therapy as a profession in the modern sense, but it certainly had injured bodies. And wherever there are injured bodies, there are attempts to restore them. A person falls from a horse. A woman strains her back lifting water. A mason drops a stone on his foot. A soldier takes a blow to the shoulder. A child breaks an arm. A monk grows stiff from age. A plowman twists his knee in wet furrows. A baker burns his hand. A weaver's fingers ache after years of work. A nobleman develops gout and becomes a burden to everyone within hearing distance. The question then becomes very simple. What can be done? In the Middle Ages, the answer depends on who you are, where you live, how much money you have, what kind of injury you suffer, and who happens to be nearby. A king may have physicians, surgeons, servants, warm chambers, baths, imported medicines, and time to rest. A peasant may have a wife, a neighbor, a strip of linen, a stool by the hearth, and work that cannot wait. A monk may have an infirmary, a regulated diet, and brothers who bring him warm broth. A soldier may have a field dressing, a prayer, and a horse he can no longer mount. And still, in all these places, the human body asks the same questions. Can I stand? Can I walk? Can I lift? Can I work? Can I sleep without pain? Can I use my hand? Can I climb the stairs? Can I return to the field, the shop, the road, the altar, the loom, the saddle, the kitchen, the bed? Physical therapy, if we use the phrase broadly, begins with those questions. So let us begin in a cottage. It is morning. The fire has been stirred back to life. The air smells of smoke, damp wool, old straw, and porridge. A man sits on a low stool near the hearth. His name does not matter. He could be called William, Thomas, Martin, or Hugh. He is a tenant farmer, and yesterday he slipped while helping move a cartwheel from mud. His back seized, not dramatically. No bones snapped. No blood flowed. No one ran for a priest. But now he cannot straighten properly. This is a serious matter. A sore back in our world is unpleasant. A sore back in his world is a threat to survival. There are fields to work, animals to tend, wood to carry, tools to mend, rent to pay, labor services to perform. A household cannot easily pause because one body has become unreliable. His wife looks at him with the mixture of concern and irritation known to every household in history. She is worried. She is also aware that the cow will not milk itself. He tries to stand. He stops halfway. He makes a sound that is not quite a groan and not quite a curse. The first treatment is obvious. Warmth. Not because anyone has read a modern pain science paper, but because warmth feels good. Warmth softens. Warmth comforts. Warmth allows a stiff body to move a little more. A cloth may be warmed near the fire and placed against the sore place. A hand may rub the back. Some kind of salve may be applied if the household has it. Herbs, animal fat, oil, wine, ale, vinegar, or other ingredients might be used according to local knowledge and availability. The rubbing matters. Massage, rubbing, kneading, and friction have very old histories. People do not need a university to discover that a sore muscle sometimes responds to a warm hand. A mother rubs a child's leg. A wife rubs a husband's shoulders. A servant rubs a lord's limbs. A bath attendant scrubs and kneads the body after bathing. A surgeon may manipulate a limb after injury. A bone setter feels for alignment. Hands are the oldest tools of therapy. In the Middle Ages, the language may not be modern, and the explanation may involve humors, heat, cold, dryness, moisture, blocked flow, corrupted matter, or divine providence. But the practical act is familiar. A sore place is rubbed. A stiff joint is warmed. A weak limb is moved. The man by the hearth leans forward. His wife presses the warmed cloth to his lower back. He complains that it is too hot. She says it is not too hot. He says she is not the one with the injury. She says she will have an injury soon if he does not stop speaking. This is also part of recovery. The patient is rarely as noble as medical writing would prefer. Now let us move to a monastery infirmary. Here the atmosphere is different. A monastery in the Middle Ages is a place of prayer, work, learning, routine, and discipline. It is also a place with bodies, which means it must deal with illness and age. Monks may grow stiff. They may suffer gout, weakness, fever, injury, digestive trouble, blindness, swollen legs, and all the ordinary humiliations of being alive in a body that slowly becomes less obedient. Many monasteries maintained infirmaries. The infirmary was a place where sick or elderly members could receive care, rest, special food, and sometimes relief from the full strictness of the ordinary monastic routine. It was not a modern hospital ward, but it was a structured place of care. There might be beds, attendants, warming fires, medicines, and a quieter rhythm. Imagine an elderly monk. He has served the community for decades. His knees ache, his back is bent, his fingers are stiff from cold and age. He cannot easily stand through long offices. He cannot walk quickly across the cloister. He perhaps once copied manuscripts, worked in the garden, or sang strongly in choir. Now he rises slowly, if at all. His treatment may include rest, warmth, diet, rubbing, bathing, support while walking, maybe a stick, maybe assistance from a younger brother. The infirmarian, the monk responsible for care, may provide herbs, simple medicines, and practical attention. The goal is not to restore the elderly monk to youthful vigor. No one expects that. The goal is comfort, enough movement to prevent decline, and enough dignity to continue religious life as far as possible. A brother helps him stand, first the feet, then the hands on the bed, then a slow push. The old monk sways. The younger one waits. They take a few steps across the room, pause, back again. This is not called gait training, but it is gait training. A person who has been ill must learn to walk again. A person who has been lying down too long becomes weaker. Even without modern terminology, caregivers knew that prolonged weakness could be dangerous. They may not have described muscle atrophy in modern terms, but they could see that too much bed weakened a body. So the old monk walks, slowly, a little each day. The cloister is a path for prayer, but also for rehabilitation. A covered walkway, a measured distance, a place to move without leaving the monastery's protection. One step, then another, then another. In the silence, the body practices remaining useful. Now let us consider the medical ideas of the time. Medicine in the learned tradition of the Middle Ages drew heavily on ancient authorities such as Hippocrates and Galen, as well as the medical learning transmitted and developed through Arabic, Persian, Jewish, and Latin traditions. Learned physicians thought in terms of humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health involved balance. Illness might involve imbalance, excess, deficiency, improper heat or cold, dryness or moisture, diet, environment, season, age, emotion, and divine will. To modern ears, some of this sounds strange, but within that system, movement, rest, bathing, diet, sleep, massage, and exercise all had places. regimen mattered. A person's health was shaped by what they ate, how they slept, what air they breathed, how much they moved, how much they rested, and how the body evacuated what it needed to evacuate. Learned medicine often paid attention to the so-called non-naturals, things like air, food and drink, sleep and waking, motion and rest, evacuation and retention, and the passions of the soul. Motion and rest. There it is, not in modern physical therapy language, but close enough to recognize. Too much rest could harm. Too much motion could harm. The proper amount depended on the person, the season, the condition, the age, the constitution, and the judgment of the healer. This is almost charmingly cautious, and sometimes quite sensible. A young laborer with a strained shoulder should not lift sacks immediately. An old man should not be left entirely still. A wounded soldier should not return to combat too early. A stiff joint may need gentle motion. A hot swelling may need cooling. A cold stiffness may need warming. The explanations differ from ours. The observations are not always foolish. Now let us move to a battlefield recovery. The battle itself is over. That is not our subject. Our subject is what happens after. The ground is churned. Men groan. Horses lie dead or injured. Armor is removed. Wounds are inspected. Some men will die quickly. Some will die later of infection. Some will survive with altered bodies. A soldier has taken a blow to the left shoulder. Perhaps a mace struck him. Perhaps he fell from a horse. Perhaps a blade cut through enough flesh to matter, but not enough to kill. The wound is cleaned as best it can be, perhaps with wine or water. It is dressed. If a surgeon is present, he may remove fragments, stop bleeding, sew or bind the wound, and give instructions. After the danger of bleeding comes the danger of infection. After infection, if the man survives, comes stiffness, weakness, pain, loss of movement. A shoulder can become useless if it is not moved, but move it too early and the wound may reopen. This is the eternal difficulty of rehabilitation. The body must rest enough to heal, but not so much that it forgets how to move. The soldier may not receive anything like a formal rehabilitation plan, but someone may help him. A comrade, a servant, a wife if he returns home, a local healer, a surgeon who sees him again. At first, his arm is bound. Then he is told to move the fingers, then the elbow, then perhaps the shoulder carefully. He hates this. Pain has a way of making reasonable advice feel like personal betrayal. He lifts the arm a little, too much. He curses. The healer says less. He lifts again. A little. Again tomorrow. This is therapy, not polished, not standardized, not always correct, but it is the work of restoring motion. Now imagine a night after a tournament. Tournaments were dangerous. Even when not intended as war, they produced bruises, broken bones, dislocations, wounds, and concussions. A nobleman might be thrown from a horse. He might land badly on a shoulder. He might twist a knee. He might take a lance strike that leaves him breathless for days. Because he is wealthy, his care is better. He may have a physician. He may have a surgeon. He may have servants who help him bathe, rub his limbs, support him as he stands, and adjust bedding. He may have access to a bath. Bathing is important here. Baths in the Middle Ages could be used for cleanliness, pleasure, medicine, and social life. Public bathhouses existed in towns, though their reputations varied, sometimes reasonably, and sometimes with moral anxiety. Elite households could provide private bathing. Warm baths were used therapeutically for pain, stiffness, skin conditions, and general comfort. A warm bath after injury could ease pain. A person might be rubbed with oils. The limbs might be massaged. The body might be wrapped. A physician might prescribe bathing according to humoral theory, to warm, soften, open pores, relax, draw out, or prepare the body for further treatment. The knight sits in warm water. He is not looking heroic. He is bruised. He is irritable. His shoulder is swollen. A servant washes his back. Another brings cloths. A surgeon examines the joint and says it must be moved gradually. The knight says he will ride by Thursday. The surgeon says he should not. The knight says he will. History does not preserve whether he listened, but one suspects many did not. Athletes and warriors have always been poor at resting. Now let us move back to a village and visit the bone setter. Bone setting is one of the oldest practical healing arts. In many communities, certain people were known for setting broken bones, reducing dislocations, applying splints, and managing sprains. These might be surgeons, barber surgeons, local specialists, or lay healers with inherited skill. Some were respected, some were rough, some were very good, some were dangerous. A boy has fallen from a tree. His forearm is bent in a way that arms should not be bent. There is crying. A mother is frightened. A father says perhaps it is not broken, which is the kind of useless optimism fathers sometimes provide. The bone setter is called. He examines the arm. He feels the bones. The boy screams before anything has happened, which is understandable. The bone setter pulls. There is a terrible moment. The bones are aligned as best as possible. Splints are applied. These might be wood, bark, stiff material, wrapped with linen or other bindings. The arm is immobilized. The boy is exhausted. The mother is relieved and horrified. Now comes the long part. Healing. A broken bone can heal crookedly. It can heal short. It can become infected if open. It can stiffen the joints above and below. It can leave weakness. The bone setter may return or may not. The family watches. The child is told not to use the arm. The child uses it anyway. The binding loosens. It is tightened. The skin itches. The boy complains. Weeks pass. Then the splint is removed. The arm is thinner. The wrist is stiff. The elbow does not bend well. Now what? In a modern clinic, the child might do range of motion exercises. the Middle Ages, he may simply begin using the arm again. Gradually, painfully, through chores, through play, through necessity, he reaches, he lifts, he carries small things. The movement returns or does not. The body rehabilitates through daily life. This is perhaps the most common form of physical therapy in the Middle Ages, not separate exercise. Work. A person recovers by returning to tasks in stages, because tasks are unavoidable. The field becomes the gym. The well becomes the resistance station. The household becomes the treatment room. The body learns again because life asks it to. Now let us consider women's bodies after childbirth. Childbirth in the Middle Ages was dangerous. It was exhausting. A woman might labor for many hours or days. She might tear, she might bleed, she might suffer pelvic injury, infection, weakness, prolapse, back pain, hip pain, or long recovery. Many women died. Many survived but were changed. What did recovery look like? It depended greatly on class. A queen or noblewoman might have a lying-in period, attended by women, cared for in a warm chamber, given special foods, helped with washing and rest. Her recovery might be watched because her body was politically important. If she was expected to bear more children, her health mattered to the dynasty. A peasant woman might have help from female relatives and neighbors, but her ability to rest was limited by work. She may be expected to resume tasks sooner than her body would prefer. Still, traditions around postpartum rest existed in many communities, and other women often understood the need for care after birth. Physical recovery after childbirth is not usually written in grand medical detail, but it was real. A woman might be helped to stand, helped to walk, wrapped for support, given warm food, kept near the fire, given herbs, advised to rest, or at least rest as much as possible. Her pelvis aches, her back aches, her breasts ache. Her abdomen feels strange, emptied, and heavy at once. If she must carry water too soon, she suffers. If she must return to field labor too soon, she suffers. If she has a caring household, she may recover better. If she does not, the body bears the cost. Here again, therapy is not a profession. It is women helping women, a mother, a sister, a neighbor, a midwife. An older woman who says, "Do not lift that yet." The younger woman says she must. The older woman says, not, if she wants to stand straight next winter. This may be the best medical advice in the room. Now let us move into a town and visit a bathhouse. The public bathhouse is an interesting place because it sits at the border of medicine, hygiene, social pleasure, and moral suspicion. Warm bathing could be recommended for health. People went to bathe, wash, sweat, relax, and sometimes for less respectable reasons. Some bathhouses acquired reputations for sexual misconduct, which caused clerical criticism. But for our purposes, the bathhouse is also a place of bodily maintenance. A man with stiff joints may come for warmth. A woman with aching limbs may come if custom and means allow. A wounded traveler may soak. A laborer may pay for relief. The bath attendant may scrub the skin, rub the shoulders, knead the back, pull gently on a limb, apply oils, or wrap the body afterward. The warm water loosens. The massage soothes. The person leaves feeling better, at least for a while. This is not modern rehabilitation, but it is body care. In some medical traditions, massage and baths were part of maintaining health. Rubbing could be gentle, moderate, or vigorous. It could be used before or after exercise. It could warm the body, soften tissues, or prepare someone for movement according to the theory of the time. Imagine a prosperous merchant with gout. Gout is a disease of pain and status in many historical imaginations, because rich food and wine are often blamed, though the reality is more complex. A man with gout has a swollen foot, red, tender, and dramatically resented. He cannot walk without complaint. His household knows his condition not by medical diagnosis, but by sound. He groans. He blames the weather. He blames the wine, but not enough to stop drinking it. A physician may prescribe diet, rest, bleeding, purging, bathing, or topical remedies, according to the understanding of the time. A servant may bathe the foot. A cloth may be applied. The foot may be elevated. The man may be advised to reduce rich foods. He may ignore this. The servant may rub the leg carefully away from the most painful swelling. This is physical care. It may help somewhat. It may not. But the household still tries, because a person in pain becomes everybody's business. Now let us visit a craftsman. A weaver sits at his loom. His shoulders round forward. His hands repeat the same motions. His eyes strain. His back aches. Occupational injury did not begin with factories. The Middle Ages had repetitive labor everywhere. Spinners, weavers, scribes, bakers, smiths, masons, carpenters, shoemakers, laundresses, brewers, cooks, porters, water carriers, and agricultural laborers all used their bodies in repeated ways. The pain they developed was not always treated as an injury. It was simply part of work, but people noticed. A scribe's hand cramps. A mason's shoulder stiffens. A porter's knees fail. A washerwoman's hands crack. A baker's wrists ache. A blacksmith's back grows hard and sore. Therapy in these cases was often informal. Rest when possible, heat, rubbing, changing tasks, using a stick, wrapping a joint, asking a younger person to lift, complaining. Complaining is not a treatment, but it is historically universal and should be counted somewhere. A craft master may have learned how to stretch his fingers, though he would not call it that. He opens and closes his hand near the fire. He rubs the base of the thumb. He rotates the wrist. He presses the palm into the table. This is not written in a medical manual. It is practical self-care. A body that must work develops habits to remain able to work. Now let us visit a scriptorium. A monk or clerk sits copying text. The room is cold because ink and parchment are not improved by smoke and heat everywhere, and because many rooms in the Middle Ages are simply cold. His fingers stiffen, his neck bends, his shoulders ache, his eyes tire. He pauses, flexes the hand, rubs the fingers, straightens the back, and returns to the line. A good copy requires bodily discipline. Writing is not only a mental act, it is posture, grip, breath, light, temperature, and endurance. A scribe's body suffers in small ways. Over years, these small ways become large. The thumb joint, the neck, the lower back, the eyes. He may warm his hands. He may take breaks according to the rhythm of prayer. He may walk in the cloister. He may be told to rest if illness overtakes him. Again, movement and rest, motion and stillness, the old balance. Now we should consider crutches and walking aids. People in the Middle Ages used sticks, staffs, crutches, and supports. Images from the period show people with mobility impairments using crutches or crawling boards in some contexts. A person who lost a foot, suffered a withered leg, survived a fracture badly healed, or lived with paralysis might rely on such aids. A crutch is simple but transformative, wood-shaped to fit under the arm or support the hand. A staff can steady the body. A cane can reduce weight on a painful leg. A pair of crutches can allow movement after injury. The making of such aids was practical carpentry. A carpenter, family member, or the injured person himself might produce them. They would not be adjustable in the modern sense. They might chafe. They might be too high or too low. They might cause new pain in the shoulder or hand. But they allowed motion. Motion means participation. A person who can move can go to church, can sit in the sun, can oversee work, can beg, can trade, can remain visible. In a world where being unable to move could mean dependence, a staff or crutch was not minor. Imagine an older woman with a bad hip. She uses a stick. She knows each uneven place in the village path. She leans slightly. She moves slowly but reliably. Children pass her too quickly. She scolds them. Her stick is both tool and authority. A person with a stick has range. And sometimes a good way to poke someone who deserves it. Now let us speak of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage was a major feature of religious life in the Middle Ages. People traveled to shrines seeking forgiveness, devotion, healing, thanksgiving, or fulfillment of vows. Some pilgrims were sick or disabled. Some traveled because they hoped a saint would heal them. Some left crutches at shrines as tokens of healing, whether physical, spiritual, or both. This touches our subject because pilgrimage was often imagined as healing through movement. A person with a bad limb might travel painfully to a shrine. A person with paralysis might be carried. A blind person might be led. A lame person might walk with crutches. At the shrine, the person might pray, touch a relic, spend the night nearby, make an offering, and hope for recovery. Modern physical therapy looks for physiological mechanisms. Pilgrimage looked for grace, but the physical acts are striking. The journey itself could strengthen or exhaust. A person walks day after day. Feet blister, legs ache, backs strain. Walking staffs are used. Other pilgrims help. At the shrine, a person may stand, kneel, rise, crawl, or circle. Body and soul are not separate in this world. Healing is not only mechanical. A stiff limb may be treated by rubbing, a broken bone by splinting, a wounded soul by confession, a disabled body by prayer. A person might seek all of these at once. Now let us think about saints and healing miracles. Miracle collections from the Middle Ages often record people healed from paralysis, lameness, contracted limbs, blindness, and other conditions at shrines. These accounts are not physical therapy manuals, but they show what kinds of bodily suffering people recognized and hoped to relieve. A child unable to walk, a man with a twisted limb, a woman bent by pain, a person who crawls to a saint's tomb and rises, a crutch left behind. To us, these stories belong to religion, not medicine. To people in the Middle Ages, the distinction was not so sharp. A body could be healed by God, by saints, by medicines, by surgery, by baths, by diet, by time, by care, or by some combination beyond human explanation. So if a person regained movement after a visit to a shrine, the recovery was not merely physical. It was a sign. The body became testimony. This matters because physical recovery in the Middle Ages was often morally and spiritually interpreted. Illness might be trial, punishment, mystery, natural imbalance, demonic affliction, or divine opportunity. The same sore knee might be rubbed with oil and prayed over. That may sound strange, but anyone who has been in long pain knows that physical suffering quickly becomes spiritual, whether one uses religious language or not. Now let us visit the barber surgeon. In many towns, barber surgeons handled practical procedures. Bleeding, tooth pulling, wound care, lancing abscesses, setting simple injuries, and other hands-on treatments. They were not learned physicians in the university sense, though skill varied widely. Some were excellent practical healers. Some were terrifying. The barber surgeon's shop is not quiet. There are razors, basins, cloths, bandages, knives, perhaps jars of ointment, maybe leeches. The smell is metallic, herbal, smoky, and human. A man comes in with a dislocated finger. The finger is swollen and crooked. The barber surgeon examines it. He pulls. The joint returns with a small, unpleasant movement. The man yelps. The finger is wrapped. The man is told to rest it. He does not, but he rests it more than he would have without being frightened by the pain. Later, the finger is stiff. He soaks it in warm water. He bends it, straightens it, bends it again. Not because anyone says flexion and extension, Because the finger must close around a tool, the body teaches the exercise. Now consider a shoulder dislocation. A man falls from a ladder. The shoulder is out. The arm hangs strangely. Reducing a dislocation is one of those procedures that looks like violence in the service of healing. Pulling, rotating, leverage, sudden motion. If done well, relief can be immediate. If done badly, harm can follow. Once the shoulder is back in place, it is bound, rest, then gradual use. Too much too soon and it slips again. Too little and stiffness remains. This balance is familiar to any modern therapist. It was familiar then too, even if expressed differently. The shoulder must be protected. The shoulder must not be abandoned. A good healer knows this. Now let us consider heat and cold. People in the Middle Ages classified many treatments through qualities: hot, cold, wet, dry. A swelling might be seen as hot and need cooling. A stiffness might be cold and need warming. Whether or not the theory matches modern science, the sensory treatment often had practical effects. Cold water on swelling can soothe. Warmth on chronic stiffness can help. Poultices can protect and moisten. Bandages can support. Rest can reduce irritation. Massage can ease tension. Some treatments would be useless. Some would be harmful. Some would be helpful for reasons different from those believed. The history of medicine is full of accidental usefulness. Now let us sit with a peasant woman whose knees hurt. She is not old by modern numbers, perhaps only in her 40s, but labor has used her. She has knelt to weed, bent to harvest, carried water, lifted children, stood over a hearth, walked to fields, walked to church, walked to neighbors, walked because everyone walks. Her knees ache in cold weather. She wraps them. She warms them near the hearth. She rubs them with fat or oil mixed with herbs if she has them. She rises slowly. Her daughter says she should sit. She says sitting does not feed anyone. This is not wise, but it is true enough to be hard to answer. Her therapy is pacing. She does heavy work in pieces. She asks a child to fetch something rather than getting it herself. She leans on a table before standing. She chooses the less muddy path even if it is longer. She rests when the pain forces her, not when reason suggests. Many people in the Middle Ages lived with chronic pain. They did not always have names for conditions: arthritis, tendinopathy, neuropathy, sciatica, chronic back pain, old fractures, pelvic injury. They had descriptions. My hip catches, my hand swells, my back burns, my foot will not bear me. My fingers are stiff in the morning. My leg is weak since the fever. The language was different. The body was the same. Now let us visit a noble household during recovery from a fracture. A young nobleman has broken his leg during a hunt. The hunt, like the tournament, is a fine way for the wealthy to turn leisure into injury. He was thrown, or his horse stumbled, or he tried to look impressive near people he wished to impress. Now he lies in a chamber with his leg splinted. This is dull for everyone. A nobleman confined to bed may become restless, demanding, and loud. Servants adjust pillows. A physician discusses diet. A surgeon checks the splint. A chaplain advises patients. Friends visit and tell him what he is missing, which does not help. At first, the leg must remain still. Then, after weeks, he must stand. This is a frightening moment. The injured leg has become thin. The joints are stiff. The foot feels strange on the floor. He leans on attendants. He puts weight through the leg. Pain. He swears. The surgeon says gently, or not gently, that it must be done. A few steps. Back to bed. The next day, a few more, then a crutch. Then perhaps a short walk across the chamber. Then along a passage. Then, someday, the courtyard. This is rehabilitation as status allows it. He has help. He has time. He has food. He may still limp forever. Wealth improves odds. It does not guarantee outcome. Now let us compare him to a poor laborer with the same broken leg. Laborer falls from a cart. His leg breaks. The local bone setter aligns it, perhaps well, perhaps poorly. The leg is splinted. The household struggles. If he cannot work, income and food suffer. His wife, children, neighbors, or parish may help. But help is limited. After some weeks, he may need to move before the bone is fully ready because life presses him. He stands too soon. The bone shifts. It heals crooked. The knee stiffens. The ankle never moves well again. He develops a limp. His limp changes everything. How fast he can work. How far he can walk. How much he can carry. How others judge him. Whether he can pay rent. Whether he becomes dependent. This is the brutal side of recovery in the Middle Ages. The body was labor. To lose motion was to lose economic standing. Physical therapy, then, was not about feeling optimal. It was about remaining viable. Now let us talk about stretching. The word may not appear in the way we use it, but people stretched because bodies demand it. A person rising from sleep reaches arms overhead. A laborer straightens after bending. A wrestler or fighter limbers himself before practice. A dancer warms through movement. A knight training with weapons must prepare shoulders, hips, and legs. Elite physical training existed. Young noblemen learned riding, wrestling, swordplay, lance work, dancing, hunting, and games requiring strength and coordination. These activities built bodies. When injuries occurred, return to training required gradual restoration, even if not formalized as rehabilitation. Knight with a stiff sword arm might practice slowly. First without armor, then with light weapon, then with shield, then on horseback. Motion layered back into skill. A dancer with a sore ankle might rest, bind, and then test weight gradually. A wrestler with a strained neck might avoid certain holds until pain lessens. This is practical sports rehabilitation, though no one calls it that. The body must return to its art. Now let us visit the training yard. A young man swings a wooden practice sword. His shoulder is recovering from strain. The master at arms notices that he guards it. He tells him to lift properly. The young man tries. Pain. The master says, do it smaller. This is a wonderful phrase in any century. Do it smaller, not stop forever, not push foolishly. Smaller. The shoulder learns again. The movement is repeated, not heroic, repetitive, controlled, dull. This is therapy hiding inside training. Now let us consider the influence of learned texts. Medical writing in the Middle Ages included discussions of exercise, massage, baths, diet, and regimen. These ideas circulated in Latin, Arabic, Hebrew, and vernacular forms over time, often through scholarly medicine and practical manuals. Learned physicians might recommend certain kinds of exercise for health: walking, riding, rubbing, bathing, and controlled motion suited to the patient. Exercise was not only for strength. It could help digestion. It could warm the body. It could balance humors. It could prepare the body for food. It could prevent sluggishness. Too much exercise could overheat or exhaust. Too little could stagnate. Again, balance. A physician attending a wealthy patient might prescribe walking in a garden. Not too far, not in bad air, not after too much food, not under the wrong conditions. A garden walk becomes therapy. The patient is supported by a servant. They walk along a path, pause, turn, walk back. The servant is bored. The patient is annoyed. The physician is satisfied if the patient obeys. The path becomes a measuring instrument, from the door to the fountain, from the fountain to the wall, from the wall back to the bench. No stopwatch, no step counter, but progress can still be noticed. Yesterday, he walked only to the fountain. Today, he reached the wall. That matters. Now let us speak of diet in rehabilitation. Modern physical therapy focuses on movement, but recovery has always depended on nourishment. A broken bone, a wound, a childbirth recovery, a fever all require food. In the Middle Ages, medical diet was shaped by humoral theory and class availability. A sick person might be given broths, light foods, wine, eggs, meat if allowed and affordable, or special preparations. Monastic infirmaries often allowed foods not permitted in the ordinary refectory. A wealthy patient could receive chicken broth. A poor patient might receive what the household had. If food was scarce, recovery slowed. Muscle does not return easily on hunger. A laborer who cannot eat well cannot regain strength well. This is true now. It was true then. So the therapy of the Middle Ages includes the humble bowl, warm broth, soft bread, ale, pottage, a bit of cheese, an egg, food as rehabilitation. No one writes it on a chart, but it matters. Now let us consider mental state. People in the Middle Ages understood that emotions affected health, though their explanations differed. Grief, fear, anger, melancholy, and despair could be seen as influencing the body. A person recovering from injury might become low in spirits. a soldier who cannot fight, a laborer who cannot work, a mother weakened after childbirth, an old monk who can no longer stand in choir. All may suffer not only pain, but loss of identity. Therapy, then, may involve encouragement, prayer, company, routine, small tasks. A person confined to bed may be given something to do with the hands. A recovering monk may be allowed to sit in the sun. A noble patient may be entertained with reading. A peasant may be dragged back into household life because there is no space for despair, which is not gentle, but sometimes sustaining. Movement restores more than joints. It restores place. A person able to walk to church again is not merely mobile. They are visible. They belong. Now let us spend a while with hands. Hands are central to life in the Middle Ages. Hands sow, hands reap, hands knead and sew, hands spin, hands write, hands milk, hands forge, hands carve, hands pray, hands fight, hands bless, hands steal, hands heal. A hand injury can ruin a trade. A cut tendon, a crushed finger, a burned palm, a stiff thumb. Any of these can alter a life. Treatment might include cleaning, binding, splinting, salves, rest, and gradual return to use. A surgeon may repair some wounds, though tendon repair, as we know it, would not be expected. Many hand injuries healed with deformity, but people adapted. A shoemaker changes grip. A cook uses the other hand more. A scribe pauses often. A woman with stiff fingers warms them before spinning. A mason wraps a tender finger. A musician practices slowly after injury. Hand therapy in the Middle Ages is mostly adaptation. How can this hand still serve? That question has no glamour. It has urgency. Now let us imagine a woman who spins. Spinning thread is constant, repetitive work. The distaff and spindle are ordinary tools in many women's lives. Fingers pinch, twist, draw, wind, again and again. A woman recovering from a hand injury may begin with small movements. She tests grip. The thread slips. She tries again. The hand cramps. She stops, rubs it, warms it, resumes. No one calls this therapeutic exercise, but the small, repeated movement restores function, or fails to. Either way, the attempt is made inside work. This is one of the biggest differences between modern and Middle Ages recovery. Today, many people set aside time for exercise. In the Middle Ages, movement was embedded in necessity. You did not do 3 sets of carrying water. You carried water because water was needed. If your shoulder hurt, you carried less, or more slowly, or with help, if help was available. If no help was available, you carried and suffered. The body was trained by life and worn down by it. Now let us think about children with disabilities. The Middle Ages included children born with deformities, weakness, paralysis, or developmental differences, as well as children injured by accident or illness. Their lives varied greatly depending on family, community, wealth, and severity. Some were cared for lovingly. Some were neglected. Some became beggars. Some entered religious houses. Some adapted to work they could perform. Physical care for such children may include carrying, supporting, encouraging movement, making crutches or braces, massaging contracted limbs, bathing, and seeking miraculous healing. Parents might take a child to a shrine, hoping for recovery. Imagine a child with a weak leg. The father makes a small crutch. The mother rubs the leg near the fire. A neighbor says to take the child to the saint's shrine. The child learns to move in a particular way. Not graceful, perhaps, but possible. Progress is measured by ordinary goals. Can the child stand? Can the child reach the door? Can the child go to church? Can the child help sort beans? Can the child scare birds from the field? Small function is still function. Now let us consider amputation and prosthetics. Amputation did occur, often from severe injury, infection, punishment, or war. Survival depended on controlling bleeding and infection, which was difficult. Some who survived the loss of a limb used crutches, peg legs, hooks, or adapted tools. Prosthetics existed in simple forms for some people, especially if they had resources or practical support. A man loses part of a leg. If he survives, the wound must heal. Then he must learn balance again. Crutches first, perhaps a wooden peg. His hips and back adjust. His hands become weight-bearing. His shoulders ache. He falls. He rises. This is rehabilitation of the hardest kind. A wealthy man may have better crafted support. A poor man may have a rough crutch and stubbornness. Both must relearn space. Doorways, mud, steps, slopes, mounting a horse, standing long enough to work. The Middle Ages did not have modern prosthetic labs, but it had human adaptation. And adaptation is the deepest form of therapy. Now let us talk about leprosy, or more accurately, the broad category of diseases called leprosy in the period. People with visible chronic skin disease, nerve damage, deformity, and social stigma might be sent to leper houses or hospitals. Some suffered loss of sensation, wounds, weakness, or deformity. Care might include washing, dressing ulcers, providing shelter, and religious support. Physical restoration was limited, but bodily maintenance mattered. A person with numb feet needs foot care, though the language may not be modern. A wound must be cleaned, a limb protected, a walking aid used, a bandage changed. These are not dramatic treatments, they are maintenance. The history of disability is often a history of maintenance, keeping skin intact, keeping joints moving, keeping infection away, keeping dignity alive. Now let us return to warm baths. There is something soothing in this subject, so we will stay with it. A bath in a wooden tub, steam rising, cloth dipped and wrung, a sore shoulder under warm water, a servant or bath attendant rubbing oil into the skin. The body, which all day has been a burden, becomes for a while an object of care. This may be in a noble chamber, a town bathhouse, or a monastic infirmary. The surroundings differ. The relief is similar. Warm water is one of the oldest medicines. A person enters stiff, sits, breathes, waits. Pain changes shape, not gone, but less sharp. Then the rubbing, long strokes, pressure along the back, kneading the calf, rubbing the arm, friction over a cold joint. The skin reddens, the patient sighs. This is not high science. It is deeply human. Now, because this is meant to be boring, let us consider bandages. Bandages are magnificent in their dullness. Strips of linen, folded cloth, wrapped around wrists, ankles, knees, ribs, heads, wounds, splints, and swollen joints. A bandage can compress, support, protect, hold medicine against skin, keep a splint in place, remind a patient not to use something too much. A poorly wrapped bandage slips. A too tight bandage causes pain. A dirty bandage invites trouble. A good bandage is a small act of skill. A household in the Middle Ages values linen. Cloth is labor. Cutting it into strips for injury is not nothing. Old cloth may become bandage. Cleanliness matters, though not with germ theory. People understood that foulness could harm wounds. Washing, drying, airing, and changing dressings had practical value. Imagine a sprained ankle, the foot swollen after stepping into a rut. The person sits near the hearth. A woman wraps the ankle, around, under, around, firm but not cruel. The injured person tries to stand. Better not healed, but supported. Sometimes that is enough. Now let us move to rib injuries. A man falls against a cart. His ribs hurt, breathing hurts, laughing hurts, coughing hurts. Everyone tells him not to cough, which is useless. A healer may bind the ribs with cloth. Modern medicine is cautious about binding ribs too tightly because breathing matters. But historically, binding was common for comfort and support. The man moves slowly. He sleeps poorly. He avoids lifting if possible. Therapy here is patience, breathing, small movement, not lying too still for too long. He does not know about pneumonia, but he knows that lying flat makes his chest worse. So he sits propped. He walks a little. He complains a lot. Healing proceeds in dull increments. A little deeper breath. A little less sharp pain. A little more ability to carry. Weeks pass. The body mends. Now let us speak of the spine. Back pain is ancient. Agricultural labor, lifting, riding, carrying, sleeping on poor bedding, falls, childbirth, age, and illness all contribute. The Middle Ages surely had countless aching backs, though records rarely honor them. Treatments might include rest, warmth, massage, ointments, baths, prayer, cupping, bleeding in some cases, dietary advice, and gradual return to work. Some treatments would not help. Some might harm, but warmth and movement likely helped many. A person with back pain learns avoidance. Do not twist while lifting. Lift with help. Rest one hand on the thigh when rising. Sleep closer to warmth. Use a stick on bad days. Ask the child to fetch the bucket. These are small adaptations. No one writes them down, but they are the daily therapy of survival. Now let us visit the field at harvest. Harvest is dangerous because work is intense and time-sensitive. Weather may ruin grain. Everyone works hard. People bend, cut, bind, carry, stack. Fatigue leads to injury. A sharp sickle cuts a hand. A back strains. A foot is crushed by a cartwheel. A shoulder is pulled lifting a sheaf. There is no convenient time to recover during harvest. This creates a brutal problem. If you rest, the work suffers. If you work, the injury worsens. Families and neighbors may adjust tasks. A person with a bad back may bind rather than carry. A person with a cut hand may watch children or sort. A person with a sprain may be sent to lighter work, if any work is truly light. Task modification is a modern therapeutic concept. The Middle Ages had it by necessity. You cannot lift, then sit and mend. You cannot walk far, then watch the animals near the yard. You cannot grip well, then sort, stir, or mind the fire. The community reallocates function, sometimes kindly, sometimes grudgingly. Now let us consider winter. Winter changes pain. Cold stiffens joints. Damp worsens aches. Work continues, but differently. Tools are repaired. Animals tended. Wood carried. Clothing mended. Indoor crafts continue. A person with chronic pain may suffer more in winter. Warmth becomes treatment. The hearth is a therapy center. The best seat near the fire is not merely comfortable. It is medical. An old man stretches his fingers toward the flame. A woman warms a cloth. A child with a bad leg sits close enough to be scolded for being too close. A stiff shoulder is rubbed under a wool garment. The fire is medicine. The family gathers around it not only for heat, but for bodily maintenance. Now let us talk about cupping and bleeding. These were common medical treatments in many periods, tied to humoral theory. Bloodletting was used for many conditions, sometimes dangerously. Cupping involved creating suction on the skin, sometimes with scarification, sometimes dry. For musculoskeletal pain, such practices might be used to draw out harmful matter or alter humoral balance. Modern judgment would be cautious, often critical. But in the Middle Ages, these practices belonged to the medical toolkit. A person with a painful shoulder might be bled. A swollen joint might be treated with applications or cupping. Whether this helped depended on the condition and method. Sometimes rest accompanying treatment may have helped more than the treatment itself. This is a recurring truth. The ritual of care may improve a patient because it forces pause. The healer arrives. The patient stops working. The body rests. Warmth is applied. Food is given. A bandage is wrapped. Perhaps the theory is wrong, but the pause is real. Many recoveries need pause. Now let us consider animals in therapy. Horses, especially, required care after injury. People who worked with animals observed lameness, swelling, gait, rest, rubbing, and gradual return to work. Veterinary and human medicine were not the same, but practical knowledge often crossed boundaries. A farrier or horseman who knew how to rest and walk a lame horse might think similarly about a man's sprained ankle. Do not run it yet. Walk it gently. Keep it warm. Do not let swelling worsen. A plow animal and a plowman both need legs. This proximity to animal care may have sharpened observation. A farmer watches how a cow favors a limb. A rider feels a horse uneven beneath him. A shepherd notices a lamb that cannot keep up. Movement reveals injury. Gait analysis, in a very humble form, is old. He is limping. She is dragging the foot. He cannot bear weight. The shoulder drops. The back is bent. The body betrays its problem in motion. Now let us follow a patient through a simple recovery. A woman named Agnes twists her ankle, stepping off a wet threshold. It swells before evening. She sits near the hearth. Her daughter removes her shoe. The ankle is tender. There is no fracture, though no one can be entirely sure. Agnes can move the toes. She can bear a little weight, but not much. The ankle is wrapped. A cool cloth may be applied at first if swelling is hot. Later, warmth may be used. She keeps the foot raised on a stool. The next morning, she tries to stand. Too painful. She uses a stick. Her household rearranges tasks. Someone else carries water. Agnes sits and spins. This annoys her because spinning with an aching foot is still better than being useless. But she resents needing help. Day by day, she tests it. A few steps, then across the room, then to the door, then to the yard, then to church slowly. The ankle remains stiff. She rotates it while seated, points and flexes the foot, rubs the swelling, walks more. After several weeks, she is nearly herself, though in damp weather she says she can still feel where it happened. This entire recovery contains the elements of physical therapy: protection, support, rest, gradual loading, range of motion, return to function. No clinic, no terminology, still therapy. Now let us look at the role of women as healers. Women in households often provided first care. They knew herbs, food, childbirth, bandaging, bathing, warming, rubbing, and the daily management of sick family members. Some women were midwives or local healers. Others simply knew what repeated life had taught them. When a child fell, a woman cleaned the wound. When a husband strained a shoulder, a woman rubbed it. When an old mother could no longer stand easily, a daughter helped her rise. When a baby's legs seemed weak, women noticed. When a postpartum body needed rest, women enforced it when they could. This informal care formed a huge, largely unwritten medical world. A history of physical therapy in the Middle Ages must include it. not because every household remedy was wise. Many were not, but because most recovery happened at home. A physician might visit the wealthy. A surgeon might set a bone. A saint might be invoked. But the day after day care was often domestic. Warm the cloth. Change the bandage. Help him stand. Tell her not to lift. Rub the joint. Bring the stool. Move the bedding. Watch the swelling. This is therapy as care work. Now let us consider the economics of rest. Rest is easy to prescribe and hard to afford. A wealthy person can rest while servants work. A monk can rest in the infirmary because the community supports him. A peasant can rest only if someone else takes up the labor. A widow with no strong household may not rest at all. This means recovery is classed. The same injury heals differently depending on social support. A noblewoman after childbirth may spend weeks in a chamber. A poor woman may be back to work in days. A knight's broken leg may be watched by surgeons. A laborer's broken leg may be set once and then left to fortune. A merchant may pay for baths. A washerwoman may warm a rag by the fire. Physical therapy in the Middle Ages is therefore not only about methods. It is about access. Who has time? Who has help? Who has food? Who has a warm room? Who has someone to rub the sore place? The answer determines outcome as much as knowledge does. Now let us speak of posture and furniture. Many people sat on benches, stools, chests, or floors. Beds varied. Work surfaces were not designed according to modern ergonomics. A person kneading dough leaned forward. A scribe bent over parchment. A cobbler hunched over leather. A woman spun while walking or sitting. A cook bent near the hearth. A field worker bent over soil. The body adapted and suffered. A stiff neck might be treated by rubbing. A rounded back might be accepted. A painful hip might be supported by a better seat if available. A wealthy person might have cushions. A poor person might have folded cloth. Small comforts matter. A cushion under a sore hip is humble medicine. A stool at the right height saves a back. A stick near the bed helps rising. People in the Middle Ages were practical enough to notice such things, even if they did not design ergonomic furniture lines. Now let us visit a hospital in a town. Hospitals in the Middle Ages varied widely. Some sheltered the poor, elderly, pilgrims, or sick. Some were attached to religious houses. Some had beds and routines. Some focused more on care than cure. A person recovering from illness or injury might find rest, food, washing, prayer, and attention. The hospital ward smells of bodies, straw, smoke, broth, herbs, and damp cloth. Beds line the space. An attendant helps a man sit up. Another changes a dressing. Someone prays. Someone coughs. A patient with a weak leg is helped to stand. He holds onto a bedpost. The attendant tells him to take a step. He does. Then another. Then back down. No chart records repetitions, but the work is the same. A body that has been near death must be coaxed back into motion. The religious nature of the setting matters. Care is charity. The sick poor may be seen as images of Christ or as spiritually significant recipients of mercy. This does not mean every hospital was gentle or clean by modern standards, but it means bodily care could be a religious act. Helping someone walk was not just practical, it could be mercy. Now let us consider fever recovery. After a severe fever, a person may be weak, dizzy, thin, and unsteady. They may have lain in bed for days or weeks. The muscles have softened. The appetite is uncertain. Standing feels dangerous. Recovery begins with sitting, then standing, then a few steps. A bowl of broth, more sleep, another few steps, fresh air if judged suitable, a walk to the door, a walk outside. This slow progression would be familiar in any century. The difference is that in the Middle Ages, the explanation might involve balancing humors, restoring strength, improving spirits, and avoiding bad air. But the practical sequence remains. Sit, stand, step, rest, eat, sleep, repeat. Now let us talk about paralysis and stroke. People in the Middle Ages experienced sudden weakness, facial droop, speech difficulty, and paralysis, though explanations differed. Some might be described as apoplexy, palsy, or other terms. Recovery varied. Some died. Some survived with weakness. A person after such an event might need assistance moving. A hand might contract. A leg might drag. Speech might change. Caregivers may rub limbs, move joints, help the person stand, provide sticks or supports, and seek medical or spiritual help. A pilgrimage to a saint might be undertaken. A physician might recommend regimen. A household might adapt. Imagine a man whose right arm no longer obeys. His wife moves the fingers for him. At first, he resists because it hurts or humiliates him. She insists. She opens the hand, closes it, rubs the palm, lifts the arm, supports the elbow. This is passive range of motion. She does not know the phrase. She knows that a hand left curled becomes harder to use. The body teaches her through observation. Now let us consider pain relief. Pain was treated with many substances: herbs, wine, opiates in some medical traditions, salves, oils, baths, heat, cold, prayer, charms, and distraction. Some remedies had real pharmacological effects. Some did not. Some were dangerous. Some were soothing because they involved care. Pain relief matters for therapy because a person in too much pain cannot move. Reduce pain and motion becomes possible. A warm bath may reduce pain enough for a stiff shoulder to move. A salve may comfort enough for sleep. Sleep restores enough for walking. Walking restores strength. Health returns in linked steps. This was true then. It is true now. Now let us pause at a garden. A wealthy patient has been told to walk after a long illness. The garden is enclosed. There are herbs. There may be fruit trees. There may be a path of packed earth or stone. The patient wears a cloak. A servant walks beside him. The physician has said morning air is best, but not if too cold. The patient walks to the bench, stops, sits, looks annoyed. The servant waits. A bird moves in the hedge. After a time, they walk back. The entire exercise has taken 10 minutes. It is a beginning. Tomorrow, perhaps farther. This is very boring, which is why it belongs perfectly in a sleep history narration. A body recovers by small distances, from bed to chair, from chair to door, from door to yard, from yard to path, from path to work. No one skips these steps without paying. Now let us talk about braces. Simple braces, supports, splints, and binding devices could help weak or injured limbs. A crooked leg might be supported, a weak ankle wrapped, a fractured limb splinted. A deformed spine might be given little effective treatment, though posture, support, and clothing could help comfort. Metal workers and leather workers could produce more complex supports for those with means. Most people relied on simple materials: wood, leather, linen, wool, straps, buckles. A support is a compromise between motion and stability. Too much freedom, pain, or damage. Too much restriction, stiffness. This is one of the central problems of physical therapy. The Middle Ages faced it with simpler tools, but the same body. Now let us visit a kitchen. A cook has burned her hand. The burn is not fatal, but it is painful and dangerous. The skin blisters. She cools it, perhaps with water, or applies a remedy. It is wrapped. For days she cannot grip well. But the kitchen needs her. She learns to stir with the other hand. She holds a cloth differently. She avoids heat with that side. As the burn heals, the skin tightens. Now she must move the fingers. If she does not, the hand stiffens. So she opens and closes them, slowly, painfully. She returns to kneading dough. That stretches the palm. She lifts pots carefully. The kitchen becomes hand therapy. The same is true for many injuries. Function returns through ordinary tasks because there is no other place for it to return. Now let us speak of sleep. Sleep is important for recovery. People in the Middle Ages knew that rest mattered. Medical regimens included sleep and waking. Too much sleep might be considered harmful in some contexts, too little in others. For an injured person, sleep is often difficult. Pain wakes, crowded rooms wake, cold wakes, fleas wake, children wake, animals wake, church bells wake. A wealthy patient has better chances of quiet. A poor patient recovers in noise. The body does what it can. A person with a broken rib sleeps propped. A woman after childbirth sleeps when the baby allows. A monk in the infirmary may be excused from some night offices. A farmer with a bad back may lie near the hearth. Sleep is not therapy in the visible sense, but without it, healing falters. Now let us consider the idea of exercise for health, not merely recovery. In the Middle Ages, movement was often natural to daily life. But deliberate exercise also existed among elites and in medical advice. Walking, riding, playing ball games, dancing, hunting, wrestling, fencing, and other activities maintained strength and coordination. Learned physicians might recommend exercise appropriate to age and condition. For the wealthy, exercise could be chosen. For the poor, movement was imposed. A nobleman rides to maintain health. A peasant walks because there is no horse. A physician recommends moderate movement after meals. A laborer has already moved too much before noon. So advice about exercise changes by class. Telling a monk to walk in the cloister is different from telling a plowman to exercise. The plowman may reasonably ask whether the physician would like to take his place behind the oxen. Now let us think about old age again. Old age in the Middle Ages could arrive early by our expectations, but people did live into old age. Elderly people faced weakness, joint pain, poor vision, tooth loss, balance problems, and dependence. Families, monasteries, hospitals, and communities cared for them in varied ways. An old man uses a staff. An old woman sits near the fire and does small tasks. A grandfather watches children because he cannot work fields. A grandmother directs household work from a stool. They may be less mobile, but not useless. Therapy in old age is often about preserving participation. A few steps to the door, a stable seat, a walking stick, a warm joint, a task suited to the hands. The body declines. The household adapts, or fails to. Now let us imagine a monastery elder again. A younger monk helps him into the cloister. They walk slowly. The old monk knows the stones. He has walked them for 40 years. His foot catches slightly. The younger monk steadies him. They pause by a column. The old monk breathes. He says he is ready to return. The younger monk says one more circuit. The old monk gives him a look that suggests sanctity has limits. They continue. This is perhaps one of the gentlest forms of rehabilitation in the Middle Ages. A covered walk, a patient companion, a familiar place, a body kept moving by obedience, care, and routine. Now let us speak of prayer as part of recovery. In the Middle Ages, one did not separate healing from God. A person might pray to Christ, the Virgin Mary, or a saint. They might make vows. They might wear devotional objects. They might hear Mass, receive blessings, or seek relics. This did not necessarily replace physical treatment. It accompanied it. A broken leg is splinted and prayed over. A stiff hand is rubbed and blessed. Child who cannot walk is taken to a shrine and also carried, fed, washed, and encouraged. A woman after childbirth thanks God and still needs rest. Spiritual and physical care intermingled. For a sleep narration, this is useful because it reminds us that healing was not merely mechanical. A sore body was part of a moral and spiritual world. Pain had meaning, whether welcome or not. Recovery could be gratitude. Disability could be trial. Care could be charity. Now let us consider the limits. Many people did not recover. A fracture became infected. A wound stiffened permanently. A dislocation damaged nerves. A woman never regained strength after childbirth. A soldier's hand curled uselessly. A child's leg grew crooked. A laborer's back pain became lifelong. The Middle Ages could offer warmth, massage, splints, baths, prayer, diet, and time. But it could not offer antibiotics. It could not offer x-rays. It could not repair many internal injuries. It could not reliably prevent infection. It could not replace joints. It could not image the spine. It could not save many people modern medicine would save. So physical therapy, such as it was, often occurred in the shadow of limits. The goal might not be full restoration. It might be enough function, enough to walk, enough to feed oneself, enough to pray, enough to work lightly, enough to sit upright, enough to sleep. Enough is a very old medical goal. Now let us follow one more recovery, very slowly. A carpenter injures his shoulder lifting a beam. The pain is immediate. He can still move the arm, but poorly. He tries to work through it for 3 days. This is a mistake. By the 4th day, he cannot lift properly. His wife tells him he is a fool. He says the beam had to be moved. She says the beam is now fine, and he is not. A local healer warms the shoulder and rubs it with oil. The arm is rested in a cloth sling for a short time. He is told not to lift. He ignores this partly because carpenters are not easily separated from wood. The pain continues. Eventually, he reduces his work. He uses the other arm more. He asks an apprentice to lift. He begins moving the shoulder gently in the morning, first swinging it slightly, then raising it a little, then more. He tests it against the wall. He presses lightly. He carries a small board, then a larger one. Weeks pass. The shoulder improves, not completely. In winter, it aches. When rain comes, he notices. When he lifts overhead, he is careful. He has learned something, not from a textbook, from pain. Pain is a poor teacher, but a persistent one. Now let us return to the idea of measuring progress. Modern therapy measures range, strength, endurance, pain scores, walking distance, balance, function. In the Middle Ages, progress was measured by life. Can he rise without help? Can she carry the pail? Can he climb the church steps? Can she knead bread again? Can he mount a horse? Can he hold a quill? Can she walk to the well? Can he stand through Mass? Can she sleep through the night? These are functional outcomes. They are plain. They matter. A peasant's discharge from therapy is not a signed form. It is returning to the field. A monk's progress note is not written in a chart. It is his presence in choir. A knight's return to sport is not cleared by protocol. It is mounting the horse again, perhaps too soon. Now, as we near the close, let us gather the main parts of physical therapy in the Middle Ages. Warmth, bathing, massage, rubbing, stretching through use, walking, splinting, wrapping, crutches, rest, gradual return to work, diet, prayer, household care, observation, adaptation. These are not modern physical therapy, but they are ancestors of the same human effort to take a body that hurts and help it move again, to take a stiff limb and coax it open, to take a weakened person and return them to a path, to support, rub, warm, bind, lift, and encourage. It is a very old kind of care. Now let us settle into a final scene. It is evening in a village. The day's work is mostly done. The light is low. A man with a sore back sits near the door, not fully recovered, but better than last week. A woman with a wrapped ankle walks carefully across the yard. An old grandmother flexes her fingers near the fire. A boy with a healed arm throws a small stick and finds the arm still stiff, but usable. A laborer leans on a staff after a broken leg, watching others carry what he once carried. A midwife visits a woman recovering from birth and tells her to rest, though both know rest is a fragile luxury. At the monastery, an old monk makes his slow circuit in the cloister. At the noble house, a young man complains about his leg exercises. At the bathhouse, warm water rises in steam around aching shoulders. At the surgeon's shop, a finger is wrapped. At a shrine, someone leaves a crutch behind, whether in miracle, hope, or gratitude. Everywhere, bodies are trying to return. Not always successfully, not always comfortably, not always with justice, but steadily. The Middle Ages were full of pain, but also full of care. Not the clean care of modern rooms, not the measured care of charts and appointments. Care in kitchens, care by hearths, care in infirmaries, care in bath steam, care in rough hands, care in linen strips, care in slow walks down cloister paths, care in a daughter helping her mother stand, care in a servant rubbing a lord's swollen foot while silently wishing the Lord would complain less, care in a wife warming a cloth for a husband who absolutely should not have lifted that cartwheel, care in a monk carrying broth to an old brother whose knees no longer obey the bells. This quiet care rarely becomes famous. It does not build cathedrals. It does not win battles. It does not sign treaties. It simply helps a person stand. And sometimes that is enough. So when we imagine healing in the Middle Ages, let us not picture only bloodletting, strange remedies, and saints' bones, though all of those belong to the story. Let us also picture the ordinary hand on the sore back, the warm bath, the wrapped ankle, the first step after fever, the crutch beside the bed, the child bending a stiff elbow after the splint is removed, the old monk walking one slow circuit more than yesterday, the body reluctant but obedient, learning again. Step, pause, step, rest, warmth, rubbing, binding, walking, work, sleep, and then again tomorrow. This was the slow mending of bodies in the Middle Ages, not modern, not precise, not always effective, but deeply human. A history of hands helping other bodies move through pain, back toward the small and necessary motions of life.